Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-Siraat was-Salaam ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Okay, so picking up where we left off. So the Shaykh said in the Fasl, he said, "A'yad al-Kuffar kathira mukhtalifa." So we basically just touched upon how they have innovated into their religion many different festivals. So if we are going to permit the fact that we are taking part in their festivals, then which one are you going to do? Because they themselves have innovated within it. The Shaykh then goes on to talking about gifts and selling. We discussed that briefly. He's saying that it's not permissible for us to give them gifts or to sell them anything which will help them مما يستعان بها على التشبه بهم, anything which will help them or help anybody else resemble or facilitate their festivals. This is within a Islamic concept or society. If you're living amongst the Muslims, is it permissible for us to accept gifts? Still, giving gifts and selling them things may be a bit different, but is it permissible for us to accept? And we talked about that, and we said that it is permissible if there is a benefit for us behind it. The next thing the Shaykh talks about is the Fasl Sawm Ayyam A'yad al-Kuffar. Is it permissible for us to fast the day of the festivals? Is it permissible for us to share acts of worship with them? Is it permissible for us to say, you take part in our festival, we'll take part in yours? And we find people doing that. We find people calling to Islam by telling them to fast Ramadan. And you'll find Joe and John fasting Ramadan just to see how it feels. And the idea is that don't go through eating food so you can reflect on how the poor are living. And this is a mistake, because the first thing we need to call to is Tawheed, number one. And number two, the reason why we do acts of worship is not for the sake of a dunya benefit. It's not for the sake of us remembering the poor. Maybe that's a reason, but it is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, Allah says. We gain taqwa, we gain His pleasure, and we enter His Jannah. So us compromising in acts of worship for these days of festivals has no purpose. The scholars then went into this field and they've differed as to the ruling on fasting the days that they have as festivals. Not to take part in their festivals, but just to imitate them. So what's the ruling on us fasting the day of Saturday? And the scholars have talked about this at length, and some of the opinions are well known. The majority of the ulama say that it's makruh to fast the day of Saturday by itself. And this is due to the hadith of Salama, where the Prophet ﷺ told her to fast Sunday as well as Saturday. And Juwayriyah, where the Prophet ﷺ saw her fasting Friday, and he told her, are you fasting the day before it or after it? And if you're not, then don't. Because singling out Friday is like singling out Saturday, and you'll imitate them in this also. And there's also a hadith of Abu Hurairah which talks about singling out Friday and Thursday. So the opinion that Ibn Taymiyyah has gone with here, and what I mean is that it is makruh to single out the day that they use to fast in their festival, or the days they venerate. The scholars differ as to why, and there are two well-known reasons as to why we are not allowed to fast those days. Some of them say it's because they venerate those days, and others say that it is because they are taking those days as Eid. Well, either way, if they're taking it as an Eid or if it's a day of veneration, then being like them in this sense is not permitted. The next chapter, the Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah says, في سائر أعياد مواسم مبتدئة. All of the festivals that they celebrate are innovations into our religion. And like we said before, whether you claim that you are celebrating this festival because it has some kind of religious resemblance for you or not, doesn't matter. As long as you're taking part in a festival, then this is an act of worship. لِكُلِّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. But there's a doubt, those people who say that if joining in their festivals was an act of worship, surely we'd get reward out of it. We're not seeking this to get reward out of. We're not seeking it to stay away from punishment. We're just doing it because it's just like a normal action. And they use things like the scholars allowing them to do it. So you will find, for example, people saying that let's have Milad al-Nabi, let's celebrate the birthday of the Prophet ﷺ. Before they said it was an act of worship, that you should do it to show your love for him. Now they are saying, it's evolved slightly, and say no, we're not doing it because it has some kind of religious resemblance, we're just doing it because it's a good day to do it. He was born on that day. Shaykh al-Islam responds to this. He said, for example, if somebody is telling you to do something, and even if he is doing it through his own ijtihad, he's a scholar, you have a big scholar telling you to do something, you're still not allowed to follow him if he's made a mistake. But unfortunately, you find people doing this with ulama from the past and from the present. They say that everything that he says is correct. This imam has said that this is the ruling on such and such. This imam or this sheikh has said that such and such person is an innovator. And what they say is that this person's ijtihad is binding, whether you accept it or not, it's the haqq. So Imam Muhammad al-Shinqiti has a very beautiful response to this in his Adwa al-Bayan. He says that if you say that the ijtihad of your sheikh, of your imam, is always right, then what you are saying that is A, he never made a mistake, and B, he knows everything in the Sharia, and everything in the Sharia is in his opinions. This is what you are saying. So if you are saying that a particular imam is always right, and I'm following his madhab, and his madhab is always correct, then you are saying he's infallible, which is putting him on the same level as the Prophet. And what you are saying is that every single ijtihad that exists in the world is found in that man, which is obviously incorrect from two different viewpoints. So now what we're saying here is that ijtihad, even if the imam is telling you to take part in festivals, then it's a matter of ijtihad, and he could be wrong in his ijtihad and we don't follow him in this. They say now that following them in their festivals is a good innovation. Milad al-Nabi is a good innovation. Taking part in Christians' festivals, Jews' festivals, Hindus' festivals is a good innovation. Yes, it's not part of the religion, but it's something good. In response, we will say that the idea of a good innovation is a qaida, it's a principle, but it's not dalil in itself. The ulama say that qawaid are the principles that you have. For example, what's the dalil for you to stand and pray, and you need to have intention? The dalil for this is the hadith, innamal a'malu bin-niyyah. We cannot say that the dalil for you to make a shart, for you to for as a condition for your salah to be sahih, that al-umur bi-maqasidiha. That's a qaida within the Sharia. That is not dalil. Secondly, they've not understood good innovation correctly. Within the ulama, or those people who say that there is a good innovation, they say it's something that has to have a religious precedence, like the Taraweeh. Prophet prayed Taraweeh, and he stopped. Umar regenerated it, and he said this is a good innovation, because there is a precedence found within the Sharia. So this argument of saying that we're going to take part of your celebrations because it's a good innovation is misunderstood and misapplied correctly. Also, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullu bid'atin dalalah." Every single bid'ah is a dalalah. Like we said before, when something is general, we cannot specify it. When something is general in the Sharia, you can't specify it unless you have dalil. And if you start specifying things without dalil, then you are going to fall into what they did before, and we discussed in the beginning of the book, by changing the Sharia based on their whims and their desires. And now, if we are saying, what are the implications of saying there is a good innovation? What you will end up doing is you will end up doing the Sharia. You will leave the Sharia by introducing new things into the religion. Number two, bid'ah will have no effect anymore. You will say this is a good bid'ah, he will say this is a good bid'ah, he will say this is a good bid'ah. Now what criterion will you use? Number three, what you are saying is that the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us about this good bid'ah. Number four, like we said before, if we introduce bid'ah into the religion, it would mean that there is no benchmark. So if you're going to say Milad al-Nabi is legislated because it's a good bid'ah, طيب, what's the next step? let's celebrate another thing, let's celebrate another thing. And then it just snowballs. There is no standardization. Also, when we are saying that there is a maslahah, because now they're saying that another aspect is that if we take part in their festivals, there is a benefit for us in it. They say that the maslahah, there is a betterment for the Muslims, so we can create some kind of unity. But this is wrong, because maslahah can only be built upon which is part of the religion, not to sacrifice parts of the religion. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that left us with whatever is good for us, and this is what is maslahah. This is what is good for us. So sticking to his sunnah. Moving on towards the end of the book now, because we are short for time, the Shaykh al-Islam says, Ibn Taymiyyah, that if people practice these festivals thinking that it's a good thing, then it's possible that they get rewarded for their intention. Now, unfortunately, people use this to say that he is promoting Milad al-Nabi and taking part of their festivals. This is not what he means here. He's saying that if you have been misguided by the ijtihad of the mujtahid, as he said in the beginning of this chapter, if your shaykh tells you that you can do it, and you sincerely believe that this is the right thing to do and you take part, then you could be rewarded for that intention, not for taking part of the festival. Also on this chapter here, Shaykh al-Albani in Silsilat al-Huda an-Nur says a very important point. He's saying that sitting with the innovators can be wajib sometimes if you're going to go to their a'yad to do inkar of their munkar. Now this is very important, because now sometimes you get seen sitting with a person, walking with a person, even talking to a person, even following him on Twitter makes you a mubtadi' with some people. This is not the point. The point is sitting with innovators is when you're supporting them in the religion and aiding them in spreading their bid'ah. The next chapter the Shaykh says, fi a'yad al-zamaniyah, sometimes the bid'ah and festivals are connected to time, to dates, and sometimes they're connected to places, like the graveyards, and places that they specify for these acts of worship. So festivals can be in time, specific days, or they can also be in specific places. Then the Shaykh goes on to talk about how people have taken graves as places of worship. Now unfortunately today, it's no longer graves, it's stadiums and malls and concerts. These are the places which remove the religion, and people chant in order to support this person on the stage or support this person in the stadium. They love him more than they love Allah. And this is why the ulama Ibn Qayyim said that ibadah has 4 or maybe 5 conditions or parts to it: love, hope, fear, submissiveness, and tawakkul. If any of these things are given to anything other than Allah, then it's ibadah, whether you call it ibadah or not. So if you love the sports star, if you have hope in the sports star that he's going to score this goal more than you having hope and love in Allah. And another thing here which is very important to note, that the qubur, going to the graveyards, was never an issue of the ummah where they used to go there to perform shirk. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the Salaf, it was never thought of that the person would go to the grave to worship the person inside the grave. This came much after, because of Ashab al-Jahim, because this is what they did, and the Muslims ended up copying them in this. The Muslims, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was the issue was, is it permissible for you to go to the grave, because going to that grave, you make dua for that person, or that particular place has virtue, like the Prophet ﷺ's grave. This was the issue. Not that you would go there and you supplicate to the Prophet ﷺ. So it's very important for us to see that this was the asl, this is how it originated from. And look how following the ways of Ashab al-Jahim has made these people into shrines, people to gods besides Allah. Wa'iyadu billah. There's one thing also I wanted to mention before we conclude, is that when we go to the grave, like we said, it was a fiqhi issue. But when you go to the grave, the scholars have 2 aspects which have led into shirk when it comes to this particular. When you go to the grave, there's 2 ahkam which have led into shirk. One is, when you go to the grave, are you allowed to supplicate for the person in the grave? They differed on that. And because of this difference of opinion, shirk has come about. And are you allowed to go there to make dua? Now some people, they go to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and they make dua to the Prophet at the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. When it comes in the Maliki madhab, when you're not allowed to recurringly go to the grave of the Prophet. But the Hanafi madhab itself, and you'll find many people doing this are Hanafis themselves, Imam Abu Hanifa said it's not permissible for you to go there to make dua. You are only allowed to go there to give salam to the Prophet ﷺ. And if you go to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, it's not permissible for you to turn your back to the Qibla. It's not permissible for you to turn your back to the Qibla and giving salam to the Prophet ﷺ. So how about, this is the khilaf that they talked about, so how about what they would see now today? People are standing there as if they're praying salah to him. I've seen more than one person make sujood to the grave from outside of the masjid. وَإِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So this is basically what we've talked about in the book. What is imitation? What are some of the characteristics of these people who were led astray from the correct path? Why is imitation such a serious thing in our religion? Why do we hold on to our identity and the hidayah that Allah has given us? And we've briefly touched upon festivals and cooperating with them in these festivals, giving to them and looking at their symbolism as well and taking part in their symbolism and looking at how they've changed these festivals into aspects of shirk within their own religion based on time, specifying time and specifying days, and going to particular places like the graveyard. And the Shaykh says in the conclusion, he said that this religion is the religion of Islam. The religion of Islam has always been the haqq. And in this we have honor. Musa came with his sharia, Isa came with his sharia, but those sharias were abrogated for you. This ummah of Muhammad alayhi salam. The objective for us is to hold on to this, and you have a lot of honor on the Day of Judgment also, based on your own identity and following the Siraat al-Mustaqeem. We don't need any other path. We don't need any other way to get to Jannah. This is the only way. So if we hold on to the guidance, and the Shaykh says, فَلْيَجْتَهِ الْمُؤْمِنِ فِي تَحْقِيقِ الْإِلْمِ وَالْإِيمَانِ. The mu'min must hold fast to seeking knowledge and perfecting his iman. وَلْيَتَّخِذَ اللَّهَ هَادِيًا وَنَصِيرًا. That he takes Allah as his guide and his aid. وَحَاكِمًا وَوَلِيًّا. That he is the one who legislates for us, and he is the one that we want to befriend and please. فَإِنَّهُ نِعْمَ الْمَوْلَى وَنِعْمَ النَّصِيرُ. He is the best master that you can have, and he is the best supporter that you can have. وَكَفَى بِرَبِّكَ هَادِيًا وَنَصِيرًا. Ask Allah to make this beneficial for us all, and ask Allah to forgive us in being shortcoming in not giving this book its due attention that it deserves, and ask Allah that He returns this ummah, that we all follow the Siraat al-Mustaqeem, and we unite upon what is the haqq, so that we can have our honor again. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.